But first, we are going to talk to SB in India. SB, you are on the line. What's going on? Are you there? Oh, hold on. Let's see. It looks like we might
Hello.
have. There we go. Now we can hear you. What's up?
We can hear you.
Yeah, so I'm new to this. I'm just asking, should I be following online, like on YouTube, or should I just mute the audio?
You can just mute the show and we'll just talk right here.
Yeah, okay. Sure. So sorry, I'm a bit nervous. As I said, it's my first time. I'm rambling. Might ramble a little bit.
No worries.
Sorry. Yeah, so I'm from India. Wait, should I start? Or,
yeah, go. Yeah.
Go for it. Go for it.
Okay. Yeah, so I'm from India, and so there's not really much in the trans resources exactly where I am. Like, I don't live in the cities either. Like, it's more of a suburban region, and it's very isolated.
Mm-hmm.
I know literally zero trans people around me, and in college I have known, I think, one. So I have known one other trans person in my life, basically. Yeah. And even in the queer community, like people, and maybe there were more, but no, they didn't reveal themselves. Anyway, so I wanted to ask because my entire conception of trans has been over the internet. Like I've watched like trans content creators, for example, or browse Reddit, Abigail Thorne, or previously Oliver Thorne, Abigail Thorne, Profilus with you, things like that. And of course, you guys. Or sorry, I don't know if I should say you guys.
No, that's fine. You guys is good. Yeah. So you're saying you don't really know trans people? There's like a question. So on the call screen notes here, I'll just do this.
Yeah. So I wanted to ask. So the thing is, so what I noticed about trans, I don't know, characteristics online seem to be a bit different from what I experienced. So I wanted to ask for some clarification and insight regarding that. For example, the gender dysphoria thing. So I want to be a woman. Like, I really would desire a woman's body for myself. I want a woman's voice for myself, for example. But I don't hate my male body. I am fine with it. I would prefer a female body, but this works. But that's not what I generally see online. I have not seen it at all, mostly, especially on Reddit. I wanted to ask if this is also like a spectrum of weak and strong dysphoria.
Yeah.
And I wanted to ask, the second thing I wanted to ask was, so I like to consider myself a feminist, and not just feminist, like progressive in general. So I hold the idea that gender is a social construct, right? Like in the sense that men and women behave in a certain way which society has historically deemed acceptable, and that's not always good. So when I want to be a woman, what does it mean? Like, do I also associate myself with those gender roles predetermined by society? Because I see that a lot, like on Reddit forums, for example. There'll be people talking about how they're trans and they have felt tomboyish, for example, or I've heard the term butch or top and bottom. Those are more sexually charged terms. But yeah, I've heard these terms, which all seem to have this notion of adhering to this traditional labels to a certain extent. And I don't really understand how to reconcile with that because I don't feel that at all, like, in my case. I'm not saying I have a problem with it. Like, I wear makeup, I wear female clothes, but I don't see how that is a part of my identity as a woman. Like, I wear male clothes and female clothes. I wear makeup or I don't wear makeup. Generally, I'm lazy, but that's the point.
Yeah. So I think if I can jump in, SB, I think you're getting at a point that I think a lot of trans people struggle with, and I think it's a big reason that a lot of trans people go through a period of thinking, well, those people might be trans, but I'm probably not trans. I mean, like, do I really need to transition? I think every trans person probably goes through a period of reconciling with, if you believe that, gender is a social construct, which gender is a social construct, you're right. The clothes you wear, the makeup you wear don't necessarily make you a woman. And failing to do that doesn't, exclude you from being a woman. I think that identity is obviously it's an internal thing where you're reconciling with how you view yourself. That's kind of what we mean when we're saying self-identify as a woman, right? A lot of people think that when somebody says they're self-identifying, that it's like a magic wand. I self-identify as a woman, poof, now it's happening. Whereas really what self-identifying is it's like a analysis of like your sense of self and how that interacts with culture and what your beliefs about what it means to be a man or woman are, or neither, and how that interfaces with how you want to express yourself to the world. I'm a firm believer that like while it is good to deconstruct the things that we're taught about gender and like what it means to be a woman, what it means to be a man, that I don't think you should punish yourself for holding those like values. Like, for example, I have long hair, right? And I don't think women need to have long hair. I don't think that having long hair is what makes me a woman. I just like having long hair. Probably part of the reason that I like having long hair as a woman is because of society teaching me that that's what makes a woman pretty, or that's what women do, or something along those lines. But I don't think just because that's the case that I should have to like cut my hair to prove that I'm a woman no matter my hair length. You know what I mean? If that makes me feel more comfortable in communicating my gender to the people around me, I think that's a perfectly valid approach, because a big part of gender is communicating to the people around you how you feel internally. I mean, that's what gender expression is, right? So I think it's good to be critical for sure of like, where these values come from and making sure we're not imposing those on other people. But I also think it's totally okay to acknowledge that despite the fact that I realize there's maybe problems with this is how I was raised, and this is what makes me feel comfortable, and this is kind of how I know I can communicate myself to society. And I think that's all right. Ben, do you want to jump in on that?
Yeah, you covered a lot of things that I agree with. I'll go to the one specific thing that you said, SB, about your body, and like you had a statement of like you would prefer to have a woman's body, but you don't hate the one that you currently have. And I want to say that that doesn't exclude you from possibly being trans. I'm not going to put suggestions in your mind of who you are and who you are not. That's your journey, and for you to figure out if you're trans or if you're not, if you're like your gender is something that is for you. But I can say that like it's very common for trans people to have those kinds of feelings. Many trans people want the other body type and don't like their current body type. And that's one way that people feel. And then there are other trans people that really don't mind the current body that they have. And that's also fine. It's just people have different ways of manifesting their gender identity and their gender dysphoria. And that's totally fine. It doesn't disqualify you. It also doesn't qualify you. And I think too, like when we're thinking about trans identity, there aren't strict criteria other than like a gender identity that's separate from the one you were assigned. Like that's kind of the basics of being trans, but everything else is kind of flexible. Like you don't have to meet these strict criteria of like, oh, you have to want this anatomy, or you have to have these procedures, or you have to have this personality and this presentation. Like, no, like the only like basic definition of being trans is that your gender identity is different than the one you were assigned at birth. So anything else that is you, like is totally up to you. Like that's fine. I know there are plenty of trans people that have not ever considered getting a surgery and never want one. And some of those people that don't ever want a surgery, just they don't think that it's meaningful for them, or they don't desire to have one. And that's totally acceptable as well. So I know for me, physical characteristics were something that mattered in terms of my dysphoria. So having top surgery really made me feel better. And in figuring out my own gender identity, it was really helpful to think about the body type that I wanted to have, because that helped clarify things for me. but that's just my experience. And other people I know, especially a lot of my friends in the non-binary community, they have very, very mixed opinions about anatomy and what they see as the anatomy that they'd prefer to have or not prefer to have. And so really there aren't any rules in terms of that. And I know that's probably not helpful because it probably just gives more questions than answers. But I'm hoping it at least gives you some freedom to explore a bit and not think that you can't be a woman if you don't hate certain anatomical features. Does that make sense?
Yeah. No, I wasn't. I wasn't wondering if I shouldn't qualify per se because I don't hate. Because of course I mean, the thing is, Arden, I think, phrased this very like a nice point about this internal, like I think, mental identity of like my identity as identifying as a woman. So I'm struggling with coming to terms with what it means as like what does it mean? Like if I like when I didn't think about it, like a few years ago, when I didn't even realize I had these urges, when the like so I didn't even like bother, and my default state was that I was a man. I mean, I didn't think about it, but that was the default I had. And now I want a female body, and I want I want to be like look. I mean, I don't know. I want other people to think I'm a girl, basically, or like a woman, basically. And nothing has changed in my mind, right? Like other than that, like I haven't changed myself because like I didn't consider that change to be significant to my identity. So I have shifted without actually shifting in a way. Like I'm trying to come to terms with that.
Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of trans people experience something similar because, like, so, like, I hear some people talk about this notion of gender apathy, like not having strong feelings about gender, and like some people talk about gender euphoria, where if they get gendered correctly, it makes them feel really good. And I feel strongly that I get dysphoric if people refer to me as a male, but I don't really feel like euphoric being referred to as a woman. It just kind of feels like, okay, yeah, that just feels normal to me. And I think a lot of trans people will go their whole life before transitioning. This is how a lot of people, before information was easily accessible about trans issues, could go like 30, 40, 50 years or more not realizing they're trans because they're like, yeah, I might kind of wish somebody would say I'm pretty instead of I'm handsome, but it's just kind of like not even a thing. Like you think like, oh, this is my body. This is, how people are referring to me. I'm just interfacing with the world. It's not even like a question in your mind. But once you become aware that there is an option there of, whether or not like you, and I don't necessarily mean, I'm not trying to say that being trans is necessarily a choice for everyone, but that like expressing and identifying yourself, you don't have to stay a man forever. If you feel like being a woman would make you happier, that is a pathway that you can explore. I think I think that just that knowledge for a lot of people can trigger feelings that they didn't realize were there. And we're probably there the whole time in retrospect, but I mean, it's also difficult because you don't want to go sort of like retconning, your own life story. I think that's a fear a lot of trans people have, is that they have to like go find the stories back in their past when you don't really have to do that. But I think it's totally okay if you went through a lot of your life not realizing, and now that it's kind of a question in your mind, it's something you actually have to wrestle with more. And I think we've given the same advice to a lot of people in this regard, that like, I think trying to identify whether you're really a woman or whether you're really whatever is kind of a wasted effort. And really what you should be doing is saying, I think being called she, her would make me feel better. I'm going to start asking my friends to use she, her pronouns. I think getting laser hair removal and removing my facial hair would make me feel better. I'm going to do that. And if along the way you just kind of find yourself fitting into and identifying as a woman, then great. Then I think you've kind of solved the problem. But if it's just like, I'm kind of non-binary and those things just made me feel a little bit better in my body, that's also okay. There's no destination that, like Ben was saying, that you necessarily have to land on. It's just, I think, an opportunity to kind of explore what would make you feel better in your skin.
Yeah.
Yeah,
All
I
right. Yeah.
co-sign
Yeah.
that. I co-sign that.
Cool.
I was just that processing. Yeah.
Sure.
Just no. Yeah. Yeah.
That
This
is
is
a lot to that's a lot to go
very
through.
tough. Tough to come to terms with it. Really decide how to go about. I've considered
Right.
hormonal therapy actually. I'm just trying to come to terms with philosophically before I do it physically, and that's where the problem lies.
Yeah.
Right, so I agree with Arden, and taking the smaller steps is going to be helpful because like in trying to face the big scary issue all at once can be very intimidating and almost limiting in a way, because you get that imposter syndrome of, am I really a woman, am I really a man? And like I agree with Arden in taking it small, like just taking the little pieces, and then when you get past a few, you kind of look back and you're like, okay, well, I have enough of these pieces put together that it's pretty obvious. And now this task that seemed like a mountain not too long ago seems like I've already climbed up half of it, and I didn't even think about it. So I'd recommend doing that. Like, don't worry about just staring at how high the mountain is, and just take little pieces at a time, and you'll get there.
For sure.
Thanks, guys. Sorry, I have. Yeah, thank you, people.
No worries. Yeah, thank you for calling us. Hopefully that was helpful. Is there anything you
That
want
was
to add?
actually helpful. Perspective shift. Yeah, thanks.
No, go ahead. Oh, go ahead, SB. I wanted to hear what you had to say.
Yeah. No, the perspective shift of it's kind of like I don't know, somewhat navel gazing, I guess, to a certain extent of figuring out identity philosophically. Like I guess I need to shift up my perspective and maybe realize it's just some sort of it's maybe it's some sort of a biological need, like a mental, like a psychological, biological in that need I have, and it cannot be rationalized in the sense like why like trying to rationalize how eating food, for example. I'm trying to think of it like that. Like you cannot rationalize that. There's nothing to rationalize there.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of, it's with a lot of like similar things. It's hard. Like, for example, I think depression can be like a good example to sort of correlate this here. When you're feeling like bad, do you have depression, or do you have maybe like bipolar depression without like manic phases? Like there could be a number of things that you actually have, but really what you know is that right now you are feeling, either like hopeless or low energy or something like that. And so it's kind of better in a lot of ways to say, okay, what can I do about those things, rather than try to focus on like what is the category that's going to make it all clear, and then I can just blaze forward once I know. Like I think that is something like navel gazing is a good way to put it. You're going to spend all your time doing that, and it can really be a wasted effort. Whereas it's a little bit easier to sort of just address the things that you do know now and that you can approach now, which would be like, pronouns, whatever sort of transition steps you might want to take, or clothes or makeup or whatever, and just kind of go from there. I think the things do sort of naturally fall into place. And also, you don't have to commit to a label. Like if you think right now that you're probably a woman and you roll with that for a few years, and then in a few years you're like, I still think that's probably not quite right, maybe I'm non-binary, that's also okay. There's no law saying once you pick you have to stay on a team or anything like that.
Yeah, that's for sure. It's just that I like, yeah, the physical aspect of wanting a female body. That's what veered me towards the transgender idea in the first place. Maybe
Yeah.
I don't know, might be non-binary. I'm not sure.
Yeah. Well, I hope that you take digest some of this, see if it's helpful, and sort of apply it. And if you want to call us back in like a month or two with how you're kind of updating you're refining your approach, we'd love to hear it. And yeah, we're going to move on and take a few other callers, but thank you so much, SB. I think this was an interesting conversation.
Thanks for the perspective.
Yeah. Bye now. All right.
Hello, I'm Jimmy Snow, executive producer of The Line, and I only became a woodworker for the puns. That's not important. If you would like to support this channel, you can do so on our Patreon or as a channel member, and you can actually support specific shows and specific hosts in special tiers on those. Check those options out. Also, you can leave a super thanks and get a little highlighted deal. But if all else fails, you can always you can subscribe and leave a comment. Now, here are some suggestions because I don't care about the algorithm. I am the algorithm. Bye.